Cyborg Assassin 1, Chapter 9, Execution. After Frankie's last shift of gutting fish, he beamed at Dave, who came to pick him up. On this day, he'd only needed to work until late morning in the stinking place. While working there for 2 months, the foulness of dead fish guts followed him around everywhere. Even washing it off with soap and water didn't work. He shouldn't have complained. Both he and Olio had never looked so stocky or felt so healthy. Back at the room, Dave prepared tea while Frankie tried to lather the stench away one last time in the shower. Dressed in a fresh green uniform, he vacated the bathroom and smiled down at Dave, who squatted and fed Olio dried meat from his pocket. Although Dave only ever showed them both kindness, Frankie had tried his best to hate the terrorist. As the vision of bullet-ridden corpses in the high-class mall came as a full-on flashback, a shudder swept through him. Dave had killed them, and he must never forget the fact. To celebrate the end of your shite position with the old fishwives, I thought you might like a day trip above ground. Steaming gold liquid splashed into 2 mugs from the spout of the pot as Dave poured and set the hot rod on the table. He nodded at the tea. Here, for energy. Frankie sniffed the bitter steam. But we've been above plenty. White hair fell into Dave's spotty face as he rolled his head and smiled. Ever been on a hover? Frankie frowned. Of course not. Those are only for the rich. Well, the Dawn Republic gave me the use of 2. And I'd say if we tied Olio's basket on the back, he might like to come along for the journey too. Tension tightened Frankie's jaw. We ain't getting rid of him, are we? Course not. You know as well as I. We got permission to keep him. After Olio had given the secret away when he bounded from Dave's trench coat and ran under tables, yapping. Dave had begged the commander not to exterminate the sparry cat. Many hours later, those in charge had agreed for Dave to collect Olio from the quarantine and keep him. He'll fall off the hoverboard. In his mind's eye, Frankie saw a splatter of crimson blood on the ground. Come on, lad. He's well trained. Dave drained his tea and bashed the mug on the side. Drink up, let's go. But I'm hungry. It's lunch in 10. I've got the 3 of us a picnic. Dave booted a rucksack on the floor. Where are we going? His expression fell and eyes clouded over. Got some business down south. Won't take long, mind. We'll have plenty of time for a long walk and a picnic afterwards. Frankie and Olio followed Dave, who carried 2 hoverboards on his back, out through the security gate and into the scrubland. The large man lowered both boards to the ground and showed Frankie how to ride one. Only in his wildest dreams did Frankie get to fly one of these things. Olio sat like a good sparry cat in the basket as Dave trussed it to the hoverboard's rear and took a test ride into the sky. Frankie's heart beat triple speed as the hoverboard dissected clouds and disappeared, but he laughed out loud when the terrorist returned with Olio fast asleep on the back. Dave scratched a boil on his cheek. Must find the motion of it soothing. As they levitated under a swirling sky, Frankie's heart felt as light as air. The afternoon was one of the first warm days of the year, and the birds chattered in the woodlands below, celebrating the spring. Frankie and Dave landed outside security gates similar to those surrounding the community where he now lived. But this encampment was different. Inside the tall barbed wire enclosure, many large buildings stood above ground instead of hidden below. You can't bring that animal inside. A security guard reclined in his seat, cracking seeds between his teeth. So what do you suggest? Dave asked. Leave it here with us. Dave frowned before he eventually nodded. The boy can wait with him. I'll be back soon. Is he one of us? Of course. He brushed a hand over Olio's feathered spine. Can't you see by his uniform? The guard cocked his head. You going to be training him? Dave's face went red and he nodded. Frankie squinted at him. It was the first time he'd heard anything about training. The guard shrugged. It'll be good for him to tag along for the experience. We'll toughen him up. Dave sighed and shook his head. Come on, lad, you're coming with me. You know where it is? The guard asked. Dave jerked his head around. Courtyard 7. Yep. Frankie followed Dave along a wide path over a concrete square between buildings where they stopped and waited. Why are we here? Keep your head down, lad. Just wait and you'll understand. Dave seemed nervous as his gaze darted around. Who are we waiting for? Some prisoners. Why? They sent me in to kill 'em. His body froze mid-movement. I recommend you close your eyes when it's time, all right? Like what you did when I shot all them rich folk in the Emporium. His stomach roiled at the sound of shuffling footsteps and chains. A line of 30 captives, all with shaved heads and striped uniforms, queued against the wall. They were natives and foreigners, some younger than he. Their skin sagged off their bones. Although the warm spring sun bathed them with glowing red light, they shuddered with sobs. An acrid smell emanated from the victims of war, sweat and urine. Frankie hyperventilated as he gripped Dave's shoulder. Don't kill him. Dave patted Frankie's hand with a heavy palm. I'm sorry you've got to see this, lad. I'm not proud of what I'm about to do. A guard whispered into Dave's ear as he handed him a machine gun. Dave lifted the heavy piece of military equipment. Step backwards, lad. Then close your eyes and block your ears. Frankie gritted his teeth so hard his jaw ached. He followed Dave's orders, swallowing sobs and breaths. The chugging explosives brought memories of the attack in Xi'an's Sky City as Dave's bullets tore into the prisoners' bodies and ripped open the air. When everything went quiet, Dave said in a strained voice, "Keep your eyes closed." He led him away. "You can open them now." As they made their way towards the security building, Frankie's pulse thudded dully in his chest. How did it come to this? How could he love this assassin like an older brother? He swallowed his sobs when they picked up a yapping Oliot and left the prison. As they trudged over the arid land in silence, Dave hoisted both hoverboards over his back, occasionally stopping to lift a stick and throw it for the sparry cat to chase. "You didn't like me killing all them prisoners, did you, kid?" "Of course I didn't." His voice came out like a squeak. "Someone's got to do it. If it weren't me, it'd be someone else." "Still don't make it right." "You want to keep living with the other commies and me?" "Yes." "Why's that?" "'Cause we ain't starving no more." "If you don't want to stay with the likes of me, you don't have to. I'm offering you freedom." "I'm scared of starving." "They want me to train you, lad." Dave's posture sagged. "Just told me yesterday." "I won't execute. I refuse." "That's why I can set you free." "But I'll starve." "Listen, don't tell anyone. But I learned of a place where there's an underground civilization. They hide from the communists. I'll take you there today. They ain't like the capitalists of Osbox, but they're not violent like the Dawn Republic either. Got their ways. Dawn Republic? That's what we're called, lad. That's the name of Isleworth's political party. I didn't realise that. And you get along with them? These other folk? Course not, but I have knowledge of them. They have food and an excellent quality of existence. Will you murder them too? No. Never in my life do I discuss it for that very reason. Why kill people if you don't want to do it? I was trained as a kid. But you accept it's unfair? Dave sucked in a breath through clenched teeth and his eyes scanned the horizon. Capitalism's wrong, child. The life you led, scum of society, feeding off the shite while the rich shop for more goods they don't need. That's wrong. Doesn't mean you should murder them. Dave's shoulders hitched up for a second. Let's eat here. They had all kinds of food. His meals had been wholesome every single day since he lived with the communists. Halfway through the meal, Dave took out a deck of cards from the sack. "Wanna play?" Frankie gulped tea to help him swallow a ball of bread and olives in his mouth. "How can I give this up? Our games of cards, the companions I've made." Dave picked a loose strand of white hair from his eye and tucked it behind his ear. "Never in my life did I think they'd choose you to become a terrorist. Otherwise, I wouldn't have ever brought you here." "Can't I stay, then escape later?" "No. They'll want you to open your eyes and watch next time I take you to the concentration camp." He buried his face in his hands and let out a tearful moan. "Those people you killed weren't all bad." Dave's head shot up and his knuckles whitened as he gripped the card deck. "That's why I'm giving you this chance. I'll take you up the mouth of the cave and leave you there. I was friends with one ruler. Got her number. She'll let you in. They've got strange eyes. You ever seen a Boluvian?" Don't think so. What do they look like? Massive eyes. He made 2 circles with the fingers and thumbs and held them over his eyes. This big and black too. No whites, no pupils, completely black. Come from old Belu. You heard of that planet? Frankie shook his head. I told you I didn't go to school. He gazed at Olio, who chased tawny rabbits down holes. What about Olio? Olio will have a better life with the communists and me. They ain't got pets at Hidden City. The contamination risk's too serious with recirculated air. I'm giving you a choice. But Olio loves me, and I love both of you. Dave's chin trembled. You've been like a son. He picked at a spot on his cheek, making it bleed. That's why I'm setting you free. Killing good people is the worst thing you can do. Then let's go together. You don't have to kill anymore. No, lad, I have obligations. Can't we beg them not to make me like you? Already tried everything. I told them the wee lad wouldn't want that. Even asked to let you learn computer engineering instead, but they wouldn't have any of it. What if I refuse? If you go back and refuse, they'll say you're a traitor of the cause and have me kill you. You promise you'll take care of Olio? Dave whistled and the creature sprinted to them. Olio purred as Dave scratched his mane of rubbery spikes and smoothed his feathered black spine, segregating red fur. Of course I'll take care of him. He's got a place at my home and in my heart. You would have too, but I don't want you to be a cold-blooded killer. That would be the end of you. Okay, Frankie wanted to hug, but didn't try. Mum had always been a great hugger, and he hadn't had one since she had died. Let's go to those caves after one last round of cards. Still got your translator? Frankie turned his head and pointed towards his ear hole. Good. And no one going to be speaking any Osbox languages in Hidden City. Chapter 10. Cyborg. Oshun? Can you hear me? Someone clasped her hand. Her vision became bleary when she opened her eyes a crack. She shut them again. Sorry, I just realised there's a huge mistake there, so I'm going to start that again and just not say that little bit. Oshun, can you hear me? Her vision became bleary when she opened her eyes a crack. She shut them again and drifted in the comfort of sleep. Oshun Musa. Head flinching, her mind cringed. She wanted to sleep, not wake. Sleeping was so pleasant. She remembered the slug and her dead friend Fran. Her eyes flashed open. An acid yellow man frowned down at her. His face and hands glimmered gold as if some naughty children had glued glitter all over his skin while he slept. His frown flattened and his expression blossomed into a smile. Oshun, how are you feeling? Numb. That's the anaesthetic. Are you in pain? No, I'm just numb. Well, that's the best I could hope for. The slugs, you saw them? Yes, they're real? They were, but one of your companions rescued a handful of us, a young Georgian man. I've forgotten his name. Chonglin? That's right. Do you know him? Yes, she remembered hearing him yelling in a crash. I'm surprised you got out. I wasn't able to move. Sorry, there's another little mistake there. Yes, she remembered hearing him yelling in a crash. I'm surprised he got out. I wasn't able to move. Initially, he couldn't either. But when he gained mobility, he ran around the cryo lounges, pulling the predators off as many hosts as he could. Word says he stacked the slugs together and cleaved them with an escape hammer. Oshun swallowed at the memory of her slug. Fran's levitating head and the globules of blood floating between the discs. My legs! She blinked rapidly as she struggled to process what had happened. She tried to lift her head off the pillow. No! The doctor yelled. She tried to prop herself up but fell through her arms. Oshun, don't! She rolled her head to the side. No arm. Just a stump. She grimaced and wanted to turn away but could not. She rolled her head to the opposite side. Gone. No! She lost track of spatial awareness as dots filled her vision. My arms! The man rested a hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry. The gastropod devoured all of your limbs. All? He nodded. While the creature murdered half the crew in the space cadets' female and male lounge. They didn't reach the other lounges. The captain and crew are still alive, and someone scattered pesticide all over the ship. She sobbed. So? Don't worry. Why? It'll be okay. How? There's a surgeon here who specializes in cybernetics and cloning technology. Can he grow me a new body? He half smiled. Not so futuristic. He'll turn me into a cyborg? She can, yes. What do you say? Her eyebrows bounced up. A cyborg? He nodded. Are my legs going to appear normal? He lowered his gaze to the floor. No. Your clone tissue will only replicate... Sorry. No, your clone tissue will only replicate muscles and nerve cells that attach the limbs to your trunk and deliver information to and from your brain. You won't have a layer of skin anymore. They'll look metal on the outside? He nodded. Afraid so. What about the mission? It still goes ahead. Did Finley die? No. He and the Georgian boy, Chonglin? Yes. The two young men are having mechanical limbs fitted now. They lost their arms and legs too? Her heart paused for a beat. Chonglin only lost one arm, and Finley lost both his legs. So they agreed? Yes. Do you concede to have cybernetic limbs fitted too? Okay. He rubbed his hands together slowly, yet his frown remained. Good. What's wrong? To make you the best mercenary possible while taking advantage of surgery, I'd need your permission for, he scratched his yellow stubble, other procedures. She cocked her head, still imagining what a freak she must look like without arms and legs. Dr. Sandras would like to insert various weapons into your appendages. Will I look strange? No, your body mass and shape will remain the same, only your skin won't. Your limbs will appear as like smooth, limb-shaped machines. There'll be crevices where weapons can protrude if needs must, in attack or defense. I need to see. His head jerked back. Sorry? I want to see what I'll look like, and I want to meet the cyber scientist, but first I must sit up so I can stop lying on my back. Of course. He clasped and unclasped his hands. I'm a little worried about your reaction when you see your legs are missing. Me too, but I'll have to face it. Not if you choose to have cybernetic legs. Oh, okay, don't hitch me up. Can I at least see the doctor? She's presently operating on the young commander, Pac Finley. The procedure might take over 12 hours. I can show you everything you need to understand. Dr. Sandras left me and other consultants with the wounded for this reason. Show me. What's your name? Dr. Jeffers. He opened a small air sphere in his palm and accessed information, then expanded the entire orb around her bed. A moving image of a semi-naked Sax woman ran on the spot above Oshun's face. Although only a few inches tall, Oshun could see that her 4 metallic limbs moved as naturally as organic arms and legs. The hologram swiveled as she continued running, so Oshun could view her from all different angles without moving. It reminded her of a hologram from a VR game. Her ghost hands twitched, wanting to move the character. Then she remembered she had no arms. Can you make her jump and do other movements? He stretched a hand into the orb and changed an interface within its outer shell. The figure soared through the air, then did martial art type dancing. Her movements looked like she was completely human and not machine at all. Do you wish to view her weaponry and super strength? Yes. He let out an amused breath through his nose, then reached into the outer layer of the air sphere again. Some holographic switches and levers popped up, which he turned and pressed. Above Oshun's line of sight, a tank formed. Dr. Jeffers smiled and nodded. I believe you achieved a great deal in one of your most recent gaming missions. You detonated President Isleworth's tank, in fact. She nodded. Watch this. He swiped his fingertips over the display panel he'd been supervising. The hologram and tank surroundings morphed into the same terrain Oshun had seen from the mountaintop, from where she had aimed her laser cannon. But the woman carried no weapons. She slid her pants off and kicked them behind a rock, leaving just her knickers. Her mechanical legs weren't metallic anymore, but painted in camo. A glowing interface on the outer edge of her upper thigh flashed red. Oshun's mouth slackened as the woman detached her leg and changed the toes and foot into the laser actuator, barrel, splitter coupling, and laser tip. With an erect spine, the hologram squatted firmly on her other leg and unfolded components from the shin until the ankle resembled the focusing chamber and the shin looked like a power cycler with cooling piping. Oshun's breath hitched as her lips parted. If this cannon was as heavy as the one Oshun had hauled up the mountain in the computer game, this woman's leg must weigh a ton. Her lips parted in wonder. Perhaps the power supply was in the top of the robotic leg, along with other components. The woman pulled a sniper scope from her knee and lay the weapon between two rocks. Why doesn't she carry one instead? Do you expect a secret agent to carry such an enormous weapon? It all depends on the mission and surveillance. Isn't her leg heavy? Dr. Jeffers scratched a cheek. I believe they construct the entire leg from a new magnesium-based alloy. But you'd need to ask someone who specializes in that mechanical area. However, I believe it's just a couple of pounds. It reminded Oshun of those toy robots some boys at her primary school have loved when she was a kid. She is a slightly older model. Dr. Sandras feels confident that with a more modern brain-to-machine interface, it'll be possible to avoid the manual labor of manipulating various weaponry and gadgets, so that one can simply order apparels to self-modify. Is this real? It's a VR simulation of what military cyborgs can accomplish. What you are seeing now is just one of the many functions that a military cybernetic limb can achieve. Oshun watched in awe as the woman lay in front and peered through the sniper scope, which had been her kneecap. She pulled the trigger and the tank exploded. With a heightened sense, Oshun squealed, "I'll do it!" She considered how helpless she'd be with no limbs and suddenly missed those huge parts of her body. Will I get to feel again? Dr. Jeffers' eyebrows twitched before his face froze. Just a little. I'm sorry. Her voice warbled with emotion. Will I be good to fight in close combat? He breathed quickly through his nose. Yes, do you choose to see such a fight? You bet. The woman fought against a man twice her size, but she was quicker and stronger. They're not using weapons. Dr. Jeffers rubbed his wrinkled forehead. Do you want to watch some more violent and bloody combat? Of course. He meddled with the airsphere's interface before hesitating mid-action. How old are you? 12. You're my niece's age. I'm a child soldier. How can you be so young? Her stomach churned. I mustn't say it's... what's the word? Confidential? She nodded. He scratched his forehead again. I'm a wargaming pro. Even before I came here, I saw blood and violence every day in the computer games I played. I won competitions too. And your mum let you play them? My mum didn't even realise who I was since I was little. She had a horrible disease and had to lie in bed every day. His eyebrows drew together. What disease was that? It's called CJD. I forgot what the letters stand for. They're too difficult to remember. I've heard of it. It's a rare disease. I'm so sorry. It won't be if they bring Mum back to life and make her normal again, she thought. As he tilted his head and made strong eye contact, his irises reflected the medical bay's light as if constructed from amber. Those games are too violent. Tell that to someone who is not about to have weapons put into her bionic legs. You agree to have the weapons then? Hey, I'm training to become a soldier. Who wouldn't? Not just a soldier, a marine. Pardon? He nodded, but his frown remained pasted on his sparkling yellow brow. You haven't seen what you'll be capable of doing in water yet, have you? Come on, then. It'll take my mind off this terrible situation. Oshun gasped herself into consciousness. The space slugs! When her eyes met Finley's eyes, her tense chest relaxed. Nightmare? She nodded. You look great. What? She swept her hand towards the ceiling and scrutinized her cyborg arm. As she flexed her fingers, her muscles had a minor sensation. Weird. I can kind of feel it, but kind of not. You are so cyborg now. She lifted a leg perpendicular to the floor. They're so shiny. I can't believe how flexible I am. Finley gestured towards his new legs, poking a knee up for her to see from her reclined position. You look good too. I miss my old ones, but we're lucky we survived. His features downturned. We lost 93 Marines. She flinched. Will we go into new cryo eggs? At some point. The slugs, are they dead? Yes, and they're spores. Spores? They're not holy slugs. Scientists believe they evolved from a symbiotic exchange between two different species. I learned about symbiosis at school. Oshun remembered how fun and interesting her biology teacher had made their classes. Did a project with two friends about the symbiotic relationship between a bacterium in the soil and tree roots. Did you like it? She nodded. I had an outstanding teacher. Before I was forced to join the military, I liked biology too. How old were you? 12. Same as you. Why? He turned to stare at the lamp. I prefer not to talk about it. Sorry. It's okay. So it turns out the proper name of these space slugs are Chatteradula. That's a hard name to remember. Heat crept into Oshun's chest. She loved spending time with Finley. They are part fungus too. The slugs eat through the limbs, skulls and brains of its prey, and then lays eggs in the decapitated torsos to set seed in. Gross. What about the males? They're all hermaphrodite. Males and females. He nodded. Even though they're omnivores, they prefer to eat meat. The eggs turn into mushrooms which grow all over leftover body parts. Those mushrooms produce spores. I've never heard of these. Only happens in space. The spores don't activate unless they're exposed to a vacuum. Then they sneak into airlocks and float around spaceships until they come into contact with cryo sponges. They've adapted to take advantage of sleeping people. It's weird. Most spores sit around waiting for the opportunity, but those lucky enough to land on a food source will develop into a single mushroom, which then transforms into a slug-like creature. That's weird. Yeah, like the mitochondria used to be a unicellular organism. Parts of the two species cells came together to create these weird creatures. How do biologists even know that? Their animal cells contain a nucleus with the slug's DNA, and a fungus cell lives within each animal cell with its own separate fungus DNA. That's crazy, isn't it? How did they get into the ship? When a spaceship maintenance guy passed through an airlock at a point in time before our mission. That's what Richard thinks. Richard? A virtual pest controller. Shouldn't they clean the ships? They spray all Nerthus ships with pesticides, but I guess they missed a section. A chill crept up her spine. If we're going back into the cryo eggs, I hope they've fully disaffected the ship this time. When he smiled, a dimple appeared in one cheek. I'm sure it has. Listen, don't you want to try out your new body? Finley pressed a palm against the wall to the side of her bed. Mirror. The entire wall became ultra-reflective. Her cornrows looked a mess. She'd asked Teresa to redo them if they got the time. Renidians had lots of tiny curls, and Oshun liked to wear hers in braids. She sat up and swung her legs around, then got out of bed, surprised at how well she felt. Looking at herself in the mirror, she turned on the spot. Are you okay? Finley sat on the hospital bed and caught her attention in the mirror's reflection. I feel bizarre. Red hot pants covered her female assets. Luckily, the slug hadn't eaten her butt off too. She could still be a mother one day, unlike all the young women the slugs had killed. Her posture crumpled. What's wrong? Just thinking about everyone who died. She stared at Finley's reflection. He blinked and turned away. We've just got to get on with it. She drew in a steady breath and hitched a foot into her cupped palm. Balancing on one leg, she pulled up the other so her metallic shin brushed up against her right ear. Look how bendy I am. Before, I could only dream of doing this. She twirled around on her balancing foot. Finley's piercing blue eyes focused on her thoughtfully. You'll be able to do a lot more than that with complete cyborg legs and cyborg arms, unlike me. She viewed his metallic legs, which became his original ones, halfway up his thighs. Why don't you have a go? He clambered off her bed and mirrored her flexible and balanced pose. I resemble a Fagong fighter. Do you think we'll be able to fight like them too? No. His expression became slack. I reckon we'll fight better. She envisioned how Mum would react when she returned to Nerthus. Would she be upset about her little girl becoming half robot and fighting in a war? What's the sad face? Finley released his leg and sat back down. Do you have family? His body and face tense. Not much of one. How can that be? He groaned. I'd rather not talk about it. She lowered herself beside him and stared at her reflective knees. What makes you ask? Sorry, what makes you ask? I was just wondering if I could phone my mum. Your mum? She's alive? He scrubbed a hand over his face. You know my story? He curled his shoulders. I know everyone's stories. It's my job. I'm your mentor. Do you know if my mum's dead or alive? His eyes seemed to go blank for a couple of seconds as he stared at his face in the mirror. Thinly? What? I mean, sorry. Did they bring her back to life? He rattled his head as if trying to shake away a thought. I don't know. They told me they'd try. Her chest tightened. But then she killed that boy. No one is to contact anyone. We're special forces now. The vision of her dead mum was tattooed in her memory. I guess so. They fell silent for a few minutes, but it was a comfortable silence. Can you find out, though? What? If she's alive or not? I doubt it. I must help organise what'll happen next on this spaceship. She clasped her hands under her chin. So what now? VR developers back on Nerthus are designing individual games for each Marine who has received cybernetic implants. But because they're all different, it could take some time before these games are complete. We'll need to learn about our weapons too. He nodded. The captain thinks it's better if we travel by tachyon thrust until the games are ready. He'll program the spaceship to stop automatically in 6 months. But then we'll only have 1.5 years left in space. It's not that clear-cut. How? You'll need to receive hormones to stop you from growing too once you awake from cryosleep. Her mouth fell open and upper lip curled back. So I'll remain a child forever? I'll never have boobs, she thought. I don't know, but those metal legs won't grow with you.